Continuing on in section 2.7, here we're going to solve the equation. So here, my x is being added by 4.7. So I get rid of addition by subtracting. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other, both. I did not change my x. Here I got plus 0. I did not change the fact that these are equal since I did the same thing on both sides. I'm subtracting here. So I take bigger minus smaller, because they have different signs, and give the sign of the bigger number. 4 is negative, so I get negative 1.2. X plus 0 is just x, so I get x equals negative 1.2. If I plug that back in, it checks. I know that I'm looking for y here. It's being subtracted, so I have to add on both sides. I know I did not change my y. Anything plus its opposite gives me 0. I have different signs, a positive 6 and a negative 2, so I'm going to do subtraction. Different signs, find the difference. I lined up my decimals there, and I get 4.65. I look, my 6 is positive, so my answer is positive. Anything plus 0 is itself, so I get y equals 4.65. And again, if I plug that back in, it will check. Feel free to pause here and give this a try if you'd like. I have x being added by 3.8, so to get rid of addition, we use subtraction. I didn't change my x. 3.8 and a negative 3.8 are opposites. They had to be 0. They're still equal since I did the same thing on both sides. And now I do my subtraction. Different signs, so bigger minus smaller. Line up your decimals. 12 minus 8 is 4. Again, we lined up that decimal. 4 minus 3 is 1. Now I look. 5 is bigger and positive, so my answer is a positive 1.4. Now, x plus 0 gives me just x, so I get 1.4. X equals 1.4. Here, I have a. It's being added. We get rid of addition by subtracting. And I subtract 10.4 on the left, which means I have to do it on the right as well. I did not change my a. Number and its opposite add to 0. These are still equal. I didn't change that. And now, when I subtract here, I have the same signs on my numbers, so I'm actually going to add them. I like to put the bigger one on top. And remember, when we add and subtract decimals, we line those up. So even though they look off kilter here, it's right because our decimals are lined up. I'm going to put a 0 as my filler, and now I add each column. 0 plus 7 is 7. 4 plus 1 is 5. Carry my decimal down. 0 plus 1 is 1, and a 1 there. So I get 11.57. And anything plus 0 is itself. So I get a equals 11.57. And we have to look back at our signs here. They are both negative, so my answer is going to be negative. Here for C, it's being added. I have a positive 6.25, 6.29, so I get rid of that by subtracting a 6.29. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to both. Anything plus its opposite gives me 0. I have not changed the fact that I have a positive c, or that these are equal. Here I have different signs, so I'm going to subtract. Bigger number on top, smaller number on the bottom. 6 is bigger than 4, so it goes on top. We subtract each column. 9 minus 1 gives me 8. 2 minus 0 gives me 2. Bring down that decimal after I lined them up, and 6 minus 4 is 2. So I get 2.28. I look, 6 is bigger, it's negative, so my answer is negative. So I get C equals negative 2.28 because 0 plus C gives me just C. 11. Y right now is being subtracted by 7.8. I get rid of subtraction by adding a 7.8. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to both. Now, I bring that Y down. I didn't change that. A number and its opposite add to 0. Here I have 22.3 and 7.8. I line up those decimals. I look, they're both positive. Same signs, I find the sum. So I bring down my decimal. 3 plus 8 is 11, carry the 1. 1 plus 2 plus 7 is 10, carry a 1, and 3. So I get 30.1. I look here, they're both positive, so my answer is positive. So a number plus 0 is just itself, and I get 30.1. In 12, it's subtracting, so I get rid of subtracting by adding. Whatever I do to one side, I do to both. I didn't change my R. The number and its opposite add to 0. These are still equal since I did the same on both sides. Now, here I have different signs, so I find the difference. Make sure you line up those decimal points, and we subtract. 8 minus 6 is 2, and 8 minus 5 is 3. Then I bring down that decimal. 0.32. I look. 0.88 is bigger, it's positive, so my answer is positive. So I get R equals 0.32. And in 13, T is being subtracted. We get rid of subtraction by adding. So I add 2.75 to both sides. My numbers are different signs here, so I find the difference. 9 is bigger than 2, so it goes on top when we're comparing those absolute values. I have to borrow here. 9, borrow again. 5, bring down that decimal, and 6. I look, 9 is bigger and negative, so my answer is going to be negative. So I have a negative 6.59. I didn't change my equals or my T, and a plus 0. So here I get T equals negative 6.59. And again, if we plug that in, it will check. M is being multiplied by 0.6, negative 0.6, so I divide by negative 0.6. And if I do it to one side, I do it to both. Here I get 1 times, I didn't change that M, equals, I have to divide here. I have a negative and a negative, so it's going to give me a positive. And then I take 5.1 divided by 0.6. Move that decimal, bring it up. 6 goes into 51, 8 times, bring it down, 48. Subtract, I get 3. I have to make another 0 and bring it down. 6 goes into 30, 5 times, which is 30, subtracts to 0. So I get a positive 8.5 here. So M equals 8.5. N is being divided by negative 8. I get rid of division by multiplying. So I'm going to multiply here, both sides, by negative 8. I didn't change my N. Negative 8 times and negative 8 divided give me a 1. Here I have 1 negative, which means my answer is going to be negative, and then I do my multiplication. 1.75 times 8 gives me 40. 56 plus 4 is 60. 8 plus 6 is 14. I check 2 numbers after my decimal, so 2 numbers after my decimal here, and I get negative 14. So N equals negative 14 because N times 1 is just itself. Here I have 7 times X. I get rid of multiplication by dividing. And as long as I do it to both sides, we are golden. So I have 1x equals, and then I have to take the 40.6 divided by 7. 7 goes in, bring up my decimal. 7 goes into 40 5 times, which is 35. Subtract, and I get 5, drop down my 6. 7 goes into 56 8 times, which is 56. Subtract, we get 0. So 5.8. 1 times x is just x, and it's a positive 5.8. Here I have multiplication, so I get rid of it by dividing the 1.8. Anything divided by itself is just 1. I still have that u. Both sides are still equal because I did the same on both sides. And now I take the 6.3 times the 1.8. 24. 48 plus 2 is 50. Then remember we go over to the 1 and I put a 0 there. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 6 is 6. And that's because we moved over to the tens place. So this is actually like 10 times 3 gives me 30. Okay. We add those up. 4, 3, 1, 1 for the 11. I check my answers here. I have 1, 2 decimal places. So I get 11.34, but 1 negative makes my answer negative. So I get u equals negative 11.34. Here I have division. I get rid of that by multiplying. As long as I do it to both sides, all I have left is a 1 times my y. If we multiply and divide by the same thing, guys, they cancel each other out and we get 1. Now I'm going to multiply here. 11.5 times 0.4. I look at my answer. 2 decimal places, so 2 decimal places. And I get 4.6. So y equals 4.6. And our last one, v is being divided. We get rid of division by multiplying. So I'm going to multiply by the negative 5.9 on both sides. As long as I do it on both sides, it works out. Keeps things equal. So I have a 1 times v, because anything divided by itself gives me a 1. And now I'm going to do that multiplication. So I take the 5.9 times the 9.1. Make sure that we put that 0 there to show that we moved over. 9 times 9 is 81. Here I get 45 plus 8, which is 53. Now we go ahead and add. We check our decimals. 1, 2, so 1, 2. I get 53.69. And if we look, 2 negatives make a positive. So I get 53.69 equals v. And that's all I have for section 2.7.